The Evergreen Cemetery is haunted. Legend has it in 1872, Mary Hart was buried alive and still haunts the graveyard.
She was buried alive and will curse anyone who tries to visit her at midnight. Some say she was a witch that would rise from the dead at midnight, and anyone visiting at that time would come face to face with her, would be a victim of the plague of the murderous ghost of Midnight Mary. Not long ago, Tiffany and I were in the beautiful state of Connecticut, and we happened to pass by this cemetery. Well, later on, I started doing research to see if there was any stories, any hauntings, and boy, was there ever. New Haven, Connecticut is a college town, so over the years, students have been hearing these demented stories, becoming inquisitive, perhaps a little cocky, mocking Midnight Mary by showing up to her gravesite at midnight, testing her, only to be found the very next day deceased. Midnight Mary, aka Mary Hart, was a 48-year-old woman from New Haven, Connecticut. Out of nowhere, she just collapsed on the ground without any warning at all and remained unconscious until passing away exactly at midnight, October 15th, 1872. Her relatives believed it may have been a stroke or a heart attack. Whatever it was, they didn't waste any time. I'm not sure if it was a day or two, but it did happen fast. On the night of her burial, her aunt had a vivid dream that would cause the unimaginable to happen. In this dream, she saw her sweet niece Mary in this casket, screaming, begging to be released from this dark, claustrophobic space. She wakes up from this terrible nightmare. She's drenched in tears, drenched in sweat. She's screaming, and she's convinced that Mary was buried alive. When they finally dug the grave back up, they opened up the casket to find Mary's nails broken and bloody. The inside of Mary's casket was shredded as if she was trying so hard to claw her way out of there. There was pieces of Mary's fingernails stuck in some of the scratch marks of the casket. She had a terrified facial expression as well, but it was too late, and this dream proved to be evident. I don't know how they did things in the past, but I'm pretty sure they didn't have the technology that we do today to make sure if somebody was living or not. People being buried alive was very common. In fact, it was so common that in some scenarios, they had this safety coffin that was constructed. They would have rope or string, sometimes tied around the ring finger, hand, or toe. This string that was attached to the corpse would go through this small door, through the casket, up to the headstone attached to a bell. Now, if that bell were to sound while someone is working the graveyard shift, they had to quickly dig up the body and save it. Ever heard the term saved by the bell? That's where that came from. On Mary's gravestone, which by the way is large and it's pink, it reads this: at high noon, just from and about to renew her daily work, in her full strength of body and mind, Mary E. Hart, having fallen prostrate, remained unconscious until she died at midnight, October 15th, 1872, born on December 16th, 1824. To me, this sounds like Mary was a healthy young woman, and it probably shocked her family the way she just suddenly passed away. Like I said, there was no warning, no health problems. She just collapsed and passed away like that. Now, there's another creepy passage on her headstone. For me, this is the creepiest, and it reads this: people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away. Creepy? Many have interpreted that phrase to mean that if you come to visit Mary at midnight, you will be cursed with death. Here's the thing, there is not a lot of videos on YouTube about Midnight Mary. I don't think anyone is up for the challenge to see if this curse is legit or not. I may go visit the Evergreen Cemetery, but I am not doing it at midnight. It could be like 12:01, maybe 3 a.m., not midnight. Now, I did a lot of research to see if I could find some true events, some real stories of real people encountering Midnight Mary, and boy, did I find some. Now, some of these stories are actual comments from an article that was posted by damnedct.com about Midnight Mary. Some of these people are locals, some of them are just visiting the area. Check this out. I grew up across the street. I heard people screaming at midnight and never saw anyone the next day. I always went there on a sunny afternoon, and every time it would get very dark and stormy, very eerie for sure. On one occasion, my cousin's son showed no respect and spit on her grave, and he had claw marks on his back and his side. Now that I hear about her trying to claw her way out, being buried alive, it's freaking me out big time. But he deserved it. In this story, these group of guys go to visit, and they tried to get there at midnight, but they were late. They got there exactly at 12:03 a.m. After missing the deadline, they decided to hang out for a bit to see if anything would happen. All of a sudden, they see this black car go right through a fence. I'm kind of taking it as it went through the fence like the car was invisible. Shortly after, the car disappeared into the darkness, and they all witnessed this together. That's pretty freaky. Till this day, people report whispering, hearing their names sometimes being called, feelings of imbalance, vertigo, and anxiety, making some panic so bad that they run towards the gates that, by the way, have been witnessed opening and closing on several accounts on their own.
I understand that some of you believe and some of you don't believe, but me and Turtle, we walked by this gate. We had to find a little hole like down on the other side of the cemetery for us to get through, guys. And this gate, no lie, was chained up like it is right here. Look, guys, this is weird. This is freaking weird. This thing was chained up and we cannot get through here. I even tried to open it up. Well, not open it up forcefully, but just try to, like, you know, try to see if it'll open up. I don't know, guys. That was weird. I hear talking around me.
The general manager of the Evergreen Cemetery, who, by the way, is not a superstitious man, recalls a cold winter evening where he received an emergency call being notified that an alarm was going off at the property, but the security company had no further information. When he gets to the cemetery, it's snowing out. But being that the temperature was rising at that time, things were starting to melt. There were patches of ice on the ground. As he's searching the cemetery property and the buildings, two things cross his mind. One, it's dark as hell, and two, there's nobody here. Most places of business like this usually notify police when alarms are tripped, but there was no police there, nothing. After seeing that it may have been a false alarm, he gets back in his car and starts making his way towards the exit, but he gets stuck. He felt as if there was a force pulling the car back and keeping it from moving. As he looked down at his car radio, he notices that the time goes from 11:59 p.m. to 12 a.m. midnight. He does manage to get away safely, and when he returns to work the very next day, there was no record whatsoever of the alarms going off anywhere on the property or buildings.
The Midnight Mary. Check it out, guys. Wow.
Top of the grave here, it says, "The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away." The sailors got drunk, and then they were found over on that gate, impaled, dead. And then, so the rumor started about Midnight Mary, and some Yale students tried it, you know, like I guess in the 70s, and they ended up impaled on that gate over there too. You're not supposed to be here at midnight, but if you sleep here, if you get drunk here and try to climb the gate, you're gonna get impaled on it.
On this comment thread underneath the article, there was a couple of goofy comments, and I found this one. It said, "I'm into golden showers, so I wouldn't be offended if my grave were pissed on or not." If you were to put a comment on this thread, anybody who responds underneath you, you get notified. Well, this guy ends up getting notified a couple of times. Watch what happens. This was the very next day, and he says this: "The following story is true. 2 nights ago at 3 a.m. in the morning, I entered this website as I had been alerted to 3 follow-up comments to my slightly wacky comment I left." Wacky? No. Rude? Yes. As soon as I opened up the 3rd comment, my electricity in my bedroom went out. I went downstairs to reset the circuit breakers and came back up expecting the lights to be back on. They weren't. To make this even stranger, they were only put out in my bedroom and part of the kitchen, but it made no sense. When the circuit breaker goes out, all of the kitchen goes out with it. That next day, the electrician came and spent over 2 hours trying to diagnose the problem. Finally, he had to bypass certain wires as he could not find the cause of why only a certain area was not working. As soon as I entered this website to see whether I could delete my comment while he was here today, the power from his bypass connection caused the power to come back on in my room. Then he came back into my room to reconnect my wall light switch, and after he had done that, I noticed that it was exactly 3 p.m. So I came back onto this website and noticed that the quote used on her grave was originally from Job 34:20. I did a little bit of research and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Job 34:20. I looked on my atomic clock, which I keep on the side of my bed, and it read 3:04 and 20 seconds. I am a non-believer in religion. I don't believe in ghosts either. I went into my basement at 3 in the morning with no working lights and fumbled till I found the circuit breaker box. That's how unafraid of the darkness I am. This makes me think though, could it all be a coincidence? He goes on to say that Mary was probably trying to send him a message to clean up his bedroom and stop being a pig. Oh yeah, he's also still into those golden showers. This comment thread is permanently closed. In fact, they're like 9 years old. I wish they would still be open because there are a lot of people that still visit the Evergreen Cemetery to hear Midnight Mary's story and sometimes test things out. Now, remember I told you I did a little bit more research on the passage, the really creepy passage that's on Midnight Mary's headstone, the one that reads, "The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away." After Googling this passage, Job 34:20 pops up. On some articles, I did see a connection. A couple other people were talking about this verse. In the King James Version, it says, "In a moment shall they die, and the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away," which is pretty much exactly what I read. But they left this part out. "And the mighty shall be taken away without hand." This is the New International Version. It says, "They die in an instant. In the middle of the night, the people are shaken and they pass away. The mighty are removed without human hand." I kind of don't like that they left this part out of the verse on the headstone. I mean, maybe they ran out of money or maybe they wanted it to look a certain way, but this part is the most important part of the verse. It's pretty much saying that Mary Hart died, and most people that die suddenly like that in the middle of the night are mighty. They're strong. It's pretty much a compliment saying that, God took her. And it was a mighty way to die, and it didn't happen by another human's hand. There's another popular person buried at the Evergreen Cemetery, and I kind of found this on accident when I started looking up the Evergreen Cemetery and because believe it or not, if you try to Google Midnight Mary or try to find some videos on Midnight Mary, there's really not that much. The closest cool video that I could find was from my friend Hobie Cat, which I met at the Pennhurst Insane Asylum a couple videos ago. I did introduce him. Dude was there at 3 a.m. I give him a lot of credit because, like I said, there's locals that avoid this place like the plague. I found out that Sarah Winchester is buried there. Now, I've done stories on Sarah Winchester. I visited the Winchester Mystery Mansion in San Jose, California. If you missed some of those videos, I encourage you to go back and check them out. In fact, I'll leave some links down below. Super haunted mansion with a very unique story. She was the daughter-in-law of Oliver Winchester, which, by the way, is also buried here at the Evergreen Cemetery. He allegedly passed down a curse to his relatives for never mourning the deaths of those killed by the Winchester rifle. Yeah, that's right. He did create the Winchester rifle. While visiting the Evergreen Cemetery, people that have visited Sarah Winchester's grave have reported feelings of being watched, touched, a strong, dark, and evil presence surrounding her headstone. On one occasion, one paranormal group that came to investigate had to leave in the middle of their investigation because they weren't feeling right.
When we went back for our full night investigation, the feeling of dread, darkness, panic was so threatening that we, for the first time ever, Sis Paranormal, did not stay to investigate. It literally felt so threatening that we never even got out of the car.
Now, some of the stories that I did share with you about Midnight Mary cannot be confirmed, but they can't be denied. I did try to see if there was any real accounts of people passing away in the middle of the night, but I couldn't find anything. With that said, do not visit Midnight Mary at midnight. Gotta go for now before you leave. Give me a kiss. Peace.